Tyla recently did an interview with British Vogue, and she addressed why she chose not to speak about her racial, cultural, and ethnic identity as a colored woman on her Breakfast Club interview last year, which had her on the receiving end of a lot of backlash. And speaking of backlash, who would have thought that telling the girls during Valentine's Day or spreading a message of self-love would have had so many people tussling? That's what we're talking about in today's video. Do y'all know how many times I tried to turn this mic on and I'm over here thinking, I already charged this. Come to find out, I was pressing the volume down button. Anyways. Aloha, beautiful humans. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, welcome back. If we've been locked in, my name is Sasha, and today we're going to get into a couple of things. Today, we are talking specifically about Tyla finally addressing why she chose not to address or speak on her racial, ethnic, and cultural identity during her Breakfast Club interview last year. She just did an interview with British Vogue, and she finally addressed all of the backlash that occurred last year. And we're also going to be talking about who knew that telling the girls on Valentine's Day to love themselves, who would have known that that would have had people throwing hands and in a tizzy, and the girls were fighting on TikTok. They were tussling over self-love advice. And I also want to talk about that. Okay, so let's get into the seeming confusion about Tyla's identity and what specifically she said in her interview with British Vogue and what even sparked the entire conversation. So last year, Tyla did an interview with the Breakfast Club, and Charlamagne the God asked her, "School me on these debates that they be having about your identity as a South African colored person. What does that even mean?" And Tyla was just immediately kind of taken aback by this question and immediately swivels her head to the back of the room. And I guess back there was her publicist or whoever, and she was like, nah, let's keep it moving. We're not going to answer that question. And so a lot of people might ask, why would you go on an interview and have questions that the interviewer is not allowed to ask you about? And that's just all celebrities in general. Like when you are interviewing somebody, people have the right to put in, and typically do, they will put in no-go questions. They will put in questions that are off limits. And her ethnic, racial, and cultural identity was one of those things that were off limits. Charlamagne the God even confirmed it himself, but he went and asked the question anyway. And listen, that's his job as a journalist. Even though I think he was asking in a disingenuous way, that has been a major topic of conversation, Tyla's identity as a colored woman. And listen, the only people who have had a really big issue about it are Americans. And this is why it's so important to travel. And if you are not able to travel, Google is free. And at the very least, you can educate yourself. Over COVID, a lot of people were very irritated, or some people anyways, were very irritated by well-meaning white people who were like, I'm muted, I'm listening and learning, but also school me and tell me all of the things to read and spoon feed me this information. A lot of people were really irritated because they were like, excuse me, Miss Ma'am, if you can hop on Google and Google banana bread recipes, you can also hop on Google and find anti-racism literature and books to read. So no. And that's my thought process surrounding pretty much anything. Google is your friend, and you shouldn't be looking to, like, yes, obviously you can be asking in good faith people conversations about their identity, their religion, their X, Y, and Z. If people identify a certain way or fall into a certain category and you're really curious about it and you feel like you have a good enough relationship with them to ask that person an intimate question, I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with asking that question. However, what irritated me about the backlash Tyla was on the receiving end of by choosing not to answer that question is the fact that she had answered that question so many times, and people still chose to be very annoyed about her response. Like, people were very irritated and remain irritated about the fact that she is a colored woman. And what is annoying to me about that is, while I understand that that word is obviously very triggering for Americans because of our own history with racism and Jim Crow and segregation, that word colored is very triggering for Americans. However, A, America is not the center of the world, and B, the word colored in America means something entirely different than the word colored in South Africa. And this is why we need to understand that our experiences, where we live, where we grew up, it may be the center of our universe, but it is not the center of the universe. And if at the very least you are not able to travel, then you can at the very least hop on Google and read. If you are, however, able to get to South Africa, I highly encourage you to make it there. South Africa is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. Like last year, Snowbay turned 40 and he's not a big birthday person, but I was like, babe, you are turning 40 years old. We can't just sit at home and not do anything, you know, maybe go to dinner. Like we got to turn up for your 40th birthday. When I asked him where he wanted to go, at first he was like, I want to go to Costa Rica. So I was like, okay, cool. So I started planning for Costa Rica and I'm looking up everything, et cetera, et cetera. Then I started looking up the weather. I was like, what season are we going to be in Costa Rica in when we're going? Because I'm not trying to go to somewhere cold. I don't believe in cold weather vacations. That's a waste of money and time, in my personal opinion. You will never find me in a cold weather place, or you will never find me in a place for vacation during their cold or rainy season. I'm not going. Miss me with that. So anyways, when I was planning for Costa Rica, I found out that we were going to be getting there during their rainy season. And I was like, we're going to put this in the back burner. So I was like, okay, hon, where do you want to go? Like, where else do you want to go? And like I said, South Africa had been on his list. So he was like, I'm going to go to South Africa. I said, boom, looked up the temperature. That's the first thing I looked up before I started planning. The temperature was going to be fine. Like December is their like summer, like December, January. That's the most popular time of the year. We were there in May. So we were getting like their spring, like late spring, early fall. So the weather was like perfect. Like we still had some warm weather days. But anyways, when we were in South Africa, like, I loved it. We did Joburg and Cape Town. We spent a week in Cape Town. And the way I want to buy property in Cape Town, I freaking loved Cape Town. Like we did a safari. I saw all the characters from The Lion King. We saw Pumbaa running around. We saw giraffes. Like we saw lions. We saw rhino. Like I loved our safari. We did a safari in Hoedspruit. And then we were in Joburg for 3 days. We were on a safari for 3 nights, 4 days, and then we did a week in Cape Town. And Cape Town, like I said, I would buy property in Cape Town. I freaking loved it in Cape Town. But when my husband and I, when we travel anywhere, we really like to get an understanding and a history of where we are. Obviously, I knew about apartheid in South Africa. Like I remember being in elementary school and singing the song, "Why Don't You Free Nelson Mandela?" Like I remember that song. Okay, so obviously we learned about South Africa and apartheid growing up. What I didn't know, and what was a big history lesson for me going to South Africa, was I did not know they had the legacy of slavery there. Like in the back of my mind, I think I knew that slavery was a thing in South Africa, but I did not know the degree to which their slavery mirrored American chattel slavery. And not only that, but a lot of the enslaved populations of people came from, Southeast Asia. I didn't know that. And so with all of that mixing came the colored community. And obviously during apartheid, that's where we get these names. That's where we get these identifiers. I learned so much in South Africa going to those museums. We went to the prison where Mandela was held. We went to his cell, and it really gave me an understanding of just the expansiveness of apartheid in South Africa. And I think because it was something that was so recent, right? Like apartheid ended a generation ago, and they are still dealing with the repercussions of apartheid, right? And so anyways, all of this to say that if you are able to travel to South Africa, definitely go. But if you're not able to travel there, at the very least, you can read. And so because of South Africa's very unique history with apartheid, which, yes, we experienced in America, but in America, it was black and white, right? Like in America, things are very black and white. In South Africa, there are so many more racial and ethnic classifications of people. And this is where Tyla grew up. This is where she formed her racial, ethnic, and cultural identity in South Africa. And just because she is coming to America doesn't mean her race, ethnicity, and culture changes. Now, yes, race is very much a social construct, and you can even make the same argument for ethnicity and culture. However, we all have cultural and racial identifiers and markers, etc., and where she is from, her racial, ethnic, and cultural marker is a colored woman. Tyla is colored, and no amount of being triggered because of our own country's history changes her identity. So why people choose to get frustrated and annoyed when she talks about it or tries to put her down or say, oh, well, she's in America now, and in America, she's mixed, so that's just what I'm going to call her. Like, relax. You don't have to like her. I think that there is something about Tyla that people just do not like. There is something about her that is very triggering for people. In all honesty, if what I know it's very easy to be like, it's jealousy, it's envy or whatever, but the fact that people have never met this girl before and will say things like, oh, she seems entitled, she seems to think she's better than people. It's like, that is a projection on your behalf, and seek help, because to just automatically come away with that perspective of someone you've never even met before, like, I don't know. And people don't, the crazy part is, if people had a lot of stories about her being like that, because there are celebrities we hear horrible things about, and it's a consistent rumor or a consistent positive thing. You know, for example, there is just this ongoing conversation that Rihanna smells really good, right? So we can just assume she smells really good because enough people have said that about her. Then there are enough people who say negative things about a celebrity, and you can just kind of, where there's smoke, there's fire. With Tyla, that doesn't seem to be there doesn't seem to be a where there's smoke, there's fire situation about her being a nasty person, being an entitled person, being unlikable. So the fact that there are so many people that just dislike her and put all this energy towards her, I think it's a projection that is deeply rooted in people's own insecurities, biases, and prejudices that they have to work out with themselves. But anyways, I think Charlamagne tha God was coming from a disingenuous place, and I'm glad, based on the way he asked her, based on the way he led, like, so school me on, you know, like, I just didn't like it. So I'm glad that Tyla did not answer the question. But unfortunately, because she did not answer, people felt a certain type of way about it. And last year when this happened, I made a TikTok video defending her. And so I'm glad that she talked about it in her British Vogue interview, because I think that this was more of a warm environment, and not necessarily a warm environment, but the way the question was asked, it felt like it was being asked in good faith. And I do not think the Breakfast Club is the appropriate platform to have that type of conversation. And this is not necessarily to say that the Breakfast Club has not had good interviews. Like, I consistently used to, like, there was, oh my goodness, for a few years, I watched every single upload of the Breakfast Club on YouTube. I still watch some of their interviews. I don't watch as much as I used to. So I'm not dismissing the Breakfast Club by any means. I'm just saying that I don't think that was necessarily the best platform to have that conversation. And the way Charlamagne tha God led with the question, I'm glad she didn't ask it. And in her recent interview with British Vogue, y'all are about to have me on my mother goose. I'm about to put on my glasses and read to y'all. No, on the real though, go read the entire interview. Like, Tyla, oh my goodness, Tyla, she is so beautiful. Anyways, this is what Tyla said in the interview. This is what Tyla said. During an American radio interview in June 2024 with host Charlamagne tha God, her refusal to be drawn into a conversation around the furor only exacerbated the matter, but she stands by her decision. Me choosing not to say anything, I'm happy that I didn't. I didn't want to explain my culture and something that is really important to me on a platform that is just going to be purposefully misconstrued. I've explained it a lot of times before, but people took that and put words in my mouth. They said a whole bunch of things that I never said and ran with it. If people really search, they'll see that in South Africa, we had a lot of segregation. It was bad for a lot of us. They just classified us. And that just so happens to be the name that the white people called us. They chose to call people that were mixed colored. And I'm not going to lie, it was hard because all my life, obviously, I knew I'm Black, but also that I'm colored. So when I went to America and people were like, you can't say that, I was in a position where I was like, okay, so what do I do? What am I then? And this is what it all comes back to. She is from a country, a place where they have their own racial, ethnic, and cultural identifiers and markers. that doesn't change just because she crosses state lines, just because she crosses an ocean. Her identity, her racial background, her ethnicity doesn't change. And who are we to demand her identify as something else just because of the history and the legacy of segregation and cultural, racial, ethnic markers in our own country? That doesn't make sense. Think about how irritated we would feel if we went to another country and somebody and people, because of what was going on in their country, demanded we identify as something else. And to a certain extent, I do understand that when you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do, right? So here, Tyla would be called multiracial or maybe mixed. She's not biracial. She would be multiracial or mixed, right? So that is probably what a lot of people would call her here in America. But I do think that there has to be some level of nuance in the conversation. And when you have conversations like that on certain platforms, and the Breakfast Club absolutely would have been one of those platforms where the conversation and the nuance would have been flattened and stripped of any complexities. And I don't even think it's that complex of a conversation. If I'm being totally honest, Tyla is a South African woman. You know, when we were in South Africa, on the way back from our safari to Cape Town, I was seated next to a woman who identified as Cape Malay. And she told me all the museums to go to if I wanted to understand the history of, apartheid and how all of the racial mixing and slavery, how it impacted the racial, ethnic, and cultural dynamics in Cape Town. And, she explained to me her background as a Cape Malay. That's how she identified. And I was just like, when I was in South Africa, what I really appreciated was they didn't shy away from their history. And maybe because it was so recent, but it was just something that was a part of the history and the culture and the legacy there. And, there is obviously, I'm not trying to romanticize South Africa. They called South Africa the Rainbow Nation, but South Africa is still dealing with the legacy of racism. Black people, the natives, what they call them, and which is crazy to me, but that's another conversation for another day. I'm not trying to make South Africa seem like this utopia. But what I do appreciate about South Africa that we don't do in America is the culture, the legacy, the impact of apartheid and slavery is very much a part of the conversation. Their constitution is one of the most equal and free and accepting constitutions in all of the world, because the history and the legacy of apartheid and all that discrimination is so recent, right? And they're still on the receiving end of that. They're still dealing with the effects of apartheid and slavery. The same way in America, we are still dealing with the history of Jim Crow and segregation and slavery, except in South Africa, they are having open conversations about it. It's not being swept under the rug and people just aren't choosing amnesia. Whereas here in America, I think there's very much this sense of it happened X, Y, and Z amount of years ago, get over it. But anyways, I'm getting a little sidetracked. This is my plea for South Africa, because I definitely want to go back. I definitely want to buy. Well, let me not say that, because that sounds very colonizer-y, saying that I want to go and buy land there. I'm not trying to do that off of no colonizer BS, but I really loved it so much. And if I could retire there, if I could buy a retirement property, baby, the way I would in a heartbeat, because I love South Africa. But anyways, I'm just really proud of Tyla for standing 10 toes down, because the fact that her race and ethnicity and cultural background, the fact that it is even a question or it's so much of a big deal in America, I honestly feel it's just really embarrassing. And it shows our obsession with race and let me take a backtrack. Because of the profession she is in, I'm not understanding why it is a big deal. And it seems like I feel like people, when we have these conversations about Tyla, there's a very specific demographic of people that really likes to flame her. And it always devolves into a diaspora war. And it always becomes, Africans, they come over here and they think they can do whatever or say whatever. That's also why I'm happy that Tyla chose not to talk about it on The Breakfast Club, because I know it would have devolved into a diaspora war. And even her choosing not to say anything it devolved into a diaspora war anyway. So so this is why I say British Vogue was the appropriate platform to have that conversation in, because yes, there is obviously racism in Britain. I'm not saying that there isn't. However, race takes on an entirely different meaning there than it does have here in America. And that's what I mean with this obsession with race, because I don't understand what the hell does her race, her ethnicity, her culture have anything to do with Tyla? In the sense that her music, you either like her music or you don't. You either vibe with it or you don't. You either want to support her or you don't. Now, listen, as a first generation Nigerian American, Africa to the world, I am representing, I am listening to, I am vibing with, I am rooting for all of the Afrobeats artists, all of the Amapiano artists, Africa to the world, okay? I'm rooting for them all to be successful in their crossover endeavors. I think Tyla has already successfully crossed over, and I'm happy for her. She has a great deal of poise in an artist nowadays that you really do not see with a lot of these newer artists popping up. What I like about her, she has a great deal of media training to the point where people are so used to seeing people be messy on the internet, especially people, that next generation of singers, musical artists, rappers, etc. We are so used to seeing them act like dummies on the internet and just crash out and put their worst foot forward. With Tyla, we see a young woman who is very polished, who has a great deal of media training, who carries herself very well. And I would say that's honestly the case for a lot of the African girlies, the newer artists. You know, you never see Thames on the internet acting like a dummy. You never see Ira Star on the internet acting stupid. You know, so I do think that there is a standard. I call it the Beyonce standard. I wish a lot of artists would go back to carrying and holding themselves like Beyonce, but we don't get stars like that anymore. We get people who, and I think some people think it's more relatable for somebody to be on the internet that way as a musical artist, as a rapper, as a celebrity, whatever. I don't find that relatable. I think it is, I think it's pretty tacky, but I also understand that I am of a different, I'm an older millennial. So I understand that the standard is different for me because, like I said, I grew up with celebrities being mostly private and we didn't get a look into their lives like we do with newer celebrities now. So that's where my opinion is coming from. But anyways, I wish Tyla much success. Go and watch the interview. It was really good, and stream Tyla because the album was really good. And I hope that she comes out with more music and she's able to continue and keep this success going for her. She dropped that Push to Start remix with Shana Paul, and I have been playing it out like consistently. I love me some Tyla. So anyways, go watch the British Vogue interview. Okay, another thing that I wanted to touch on is the controversy. Who would have known that telling girlies on Valentine's Day to love themselves would have had people tussling, frustrated, and irritated. Now listen, there was a clip circulating of Drew Afualo. She is an influencer and an author. I think she has her own podcast. She's very big on TikTok. I really like her content. Did I say her last name right? Afualo? I think that's how you pronounce her last name. Anyways, I really like her. Drew is for the girls. You know, she be giving the girls advice and giving it to men, talking about patriarchy and misogyny. Like, I really think her content is relatable and fresh and funny and speaks to people in a way that's not condescending, but very topical, considering a lot of things going on in our society, but specifically what a lot of women have to deal with when it comes to just everything. Pray for the girls. It's hard out there for the girls. So anyways, she did an interview with Tea Not Piss. I think that was, hold on, oh my God, can I even say that on the YouTube? Last year, or maybe it was back in 2022, she did an interview with Tea Not Piss, and they were talking about self-love and how you move forward after a breakup, how you get back to yourself, how you get over someone, da 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 da. So she did that interview about 3 years ago, as is my understanding. And over Valentine's Day, a clip of the interview about where she was talking about self-love, which I didn't think there was anything necessarily wrong with it. But here, you watch it and drop that in the comments and let me know your thoughts. This is what specifically she said. This is a clip from the interview, but this was the part specifically that she was talking about self-love that had people upset.
You know what? That's part of the learning process, the self-love process. Because I always say too, like, sometimes I'll talk to my single friends, and like some of my friends who are single, and they'll tell me like, oh, like I just like feel like, you know, I'm ready, I want to meet someone, blah blah blah. But I always say, like, if you're ready right now, it will happen when it's supposed to happen. I truly believe that. That's true. If it's not happening yet, you're not there yet. Like, when in your self-love journey, because no one's ever gonna love you more than you love yourself. So you have to love yourself unconditionally, and then when you meet the right person, you're not gonna seek them out for that kind of love, because you're gonna already have it. So they'll just amplify it, right? They'll make you feel love in a much different way than how you make yourself feel when you love yourself. So it's like, it's one of those things that you just gotta be patient.
And that's different from like that notion that like, oh, I have to be perfect.
Exactly.
I have to love myself so much so where nothing can faze me. That's different than like, oh, like I need to love myself to receive love.
Yeah.
I just want that difference to be said out loud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Watching that clip, I didn't necessarily think there was anything wrong with it, right? Self-love is the best love. It's the most valuable and important love that you will have. And you have to exist with yourself every single day, right? So you better love yourself, because no one's going to love you the way you love you. So I did not necessarily think that there was anything wrong with that message. But then I got on TikTok and I'm scrolling and people are upset. And I'm like, wait a minute, is something missing? Nobody and I have been together for 14 years. We've been married for 9 years. So I'm looking at this as someone who is in the confines of a relationship. And as I'm watching people's videos, I started to see that maybe it was right message, wrong messenger. Drew is engaged. She is engaged to, I know that they went to high school together. I don't think they dated in high school. I'm not sure about what their timeline is. I'm fairly certain, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm fairly certain they went to high school together. They were friends. Then they got together after high school, right? So they've known each other for a very long time. They've been together for 5 years. They're engaged to be married now. And so a lot of people have said that Drew, some of the criticism that she received is that as someone who is engaged, as someone who is in partnership, to tell people that all they have to do is love themselves on Valentine's Day, it's very disingenuous. It's condescending. And if I'm looking at this from the perspective of a single woman, I'm not a single woman, but I'm saying if I was going to put myself in a single woman's shoes, I think I can somewhat understand that. And here's why. Because I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with desiring partnership. I think the pendulum has swung so far. We live in extremes as a society. We existed on this one extreme for so long that women's worth was defined, their value, their worth was defined by their proximity to a man. And so if a woman wasn't married, if she wasn't a mother, then she was not of value. She was looked down upon. You know, we harshly and negatively judged women for being single. Now the pendulum has swung so far on the opposite side where we look down upon women. Some people, I don't, because I don't think that there's anything wrong, like I said, with desiring and seeking partnership. We were not meant to be on this earth alone. We are designed as humans to be in relationships, to be in community with others. And so I don't necessarily think that there is anything wrong with women seeking partnership. However, we have swung the pendulum in the opposite and extreme direction in response to the other side that was already extreme, where a lot of people devalued women if they were not connected or tied to a man or they weren't mothers. We have now swung it in the opposite direction, where now if you seek that, if you want to be a mother, if you want to be married, or if you want a relationship, you don't love yourself, or you are feeding into the patriarchy. And it's just like, no. That's not accurate. That's not accurate at all. I was confused as I was watching some of the videos.
On God, I swear I'd be charging my mics before these videos, and then in the process, they will just die. I guess that's an indicator I talk too much. Based on the backlash Drew faced, I don't think that there was anything wrong with what she said. It seems to me that it was a case of right message, wrong messenger. Wrong messenger, however, specifically because she is someone who is in a relationship. She is someone who is engaged. She is not single. And so telling single women on Valentine's Day to be happy, to just love yourselves, it came across as condescending to some people. One of the comments in the video I posted trying to get clarity on the backlash, the comment said, it was upsetting because the self-love phrase adds nothing to the issue of not having said love the person wants. Basically, imagine being at a job and never getting a promotion, even though you've done everything right and all you hear is just keep working. Nobody wants to hear all of that. And you know what? When put that way, I get it. I get it. Dating nowadays seems to be very ghetto, and I would honestly say the vast majority of single women that I know, they are single by choice. They are single because they love themselves, because their standards are so high and they are not willing to settle. That is why that is why they are single. To be perfectly honest, I don't think getting engaged, I don't think having a boyfriend, I don't think being married is a huge accomplishment, in the sense that anybody can get engaged. You can be with just anybody, but it is the quality of your marriage. It is the quality of your relationship. It is the quality of your boyfriend, your girlfriend, who you choose to be in partnership with. That is more important. And so telling people to just love yourself when the vast majority of people who are seeking partnership, the reason why they are single is because they do love themselves, and someone who is engaged or married is telling you that, I can honestly understand why that would piss somebody off. I can honestly understand why that would be irritating. However, I'm of the mindset, I would not take criticism from someone I would not take advice from, and I would not take advice from someone who is not in the position that I am trying to be in or has never been in that place. I would never take advice from someone who has not demonstrated success in the space that I would be seeking advice for, or whatever it is that I'm working towards, right? So if you desire partnership and you desire marriage, why would you not take advice from someone who has partnership and who is married? See, that's where I get lost. But then there was another video that I came across, and I think I will do a separate video on her video because it was very, I don't even know how she got to this point based off of, I can understand how she got to this point, but a lot of people's responses came from a place of projection, misdirected anger, and irritation. And so let me just play the video, because let me rephrase this also. As I was watching this video, I think she deleted it, so I was not able to watch the entire 3-minute video. I only was able to grab this part of the video. And I think I'm gonna do a separate video on this, because I do think that there is a level in unreasonable, if I'm being 110% honest, I think there is an unreasonable expectation when it comes to women and how we show up in friendship when we are partnered or married. And I can't speak to motherhood, but I think that there is probably a layer onto that when you are a mother. But I think that there is an unreasonable expectation when it comes to women and how they show up in their friendships, when they are partnered, when they are married, or when they have a boyfriend. The expectation is not there when it comes to single women. And I kind of want to touch on that, but this video was getting long enough. So I'm going to leave that as another video for another day. But this is the video that I'm talking about.
I keep refilming this video because I keep getting upset because I'm tired of the gaslighting. I'm tired of the back and forth from women who consistently contradict their statements. If romantic love doesn't mean anything, if all you need is community, friends, and family, why are you laid up next to a man every night? Why? Why are you in a relationship? Why are you bragging about your happy and healthy relationship and this man that you're going to marry and have kids with if none of that stuff matters? Because it matters to you because you know it fulfills something in you that is very different than what you get from familial and platonic relationships. You know it, I know it, and I'm tired of the self-righteous bullshit that you guys tell yourselves every day because you just don't have an answer when people wonder why they're still alone. And you can just say that you got lucky. I would be fine with that. But I'm sick and tired of people getting on the internet and saying that you just need to love yourself more. Do you know how hard it is to love yourself when every time you like somebody, they tell you you're ugly or you're not good enough, and it's been happening your entire life? To go through all of your formative years, your 20s, almost your 30s, and watch everyone around you experience intimacy and romance and you want it so badly and you can't have it because for some reason something's obviously wrong with you. And I get it. Like, it may not be me, it may not be other women who experience this, but it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And instead of just making space for the so-called community and understanding why we feel this way and why that has an effect on your self-esteem, you preach at us and tell us that, you know, we're centering men and we need to detach these relationships. Fuck all that. I'm sorry. I'm so sick of this. You have no idea what it feels like because you have had love reciprocated on more than one occasion, and maybe you choose to be single, but it's a
So her video, while valid, it speaks to the projection that I'm talking about in response to Drew's very, very, very simple and valid statement about self-love, right? That she didn't even say. I bet she was sitting in her home like, how I get dragged into this? All because somebody decided to post a clip of an interview that she did 3 years ago. Now she's sitting there on Valentine's Day with her man minding her business and she hops on the internet and now she's being dragged. If I was Drew, I would be so pissed. But anyway, while I understand what this girl is saying, it has nothing to do with Drew and her message of self-love. I don't think it was condescending. And I think a lot of the frustration and the irritation her video was met with, I think a lot of it is displaced and misplaced anger and frustration at whatever is going on in their personal lives or a lack of what's going on in their romantic lives, in their personal lives. But anyways, those are just things that happened on the internet this week that I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to talk about them because I just be having a lot of thoughts, and there are just certain things that I feel like you cannot talk about on TikTok because A, people don't have the attention spans, but also B, the conversation is just so much more nuanced than you can get in a minute long video. And I won't, even though you have the option for 3-minute videos and 10-minute videos on TikTok, you lose people after 30 seconds. So conversations that should be 3, 10, maybe 15 minutes long, you're gonna lose people in 30 seconds because people have the attention of goldfish. But if you made it to the end of this video, drop down in the comments and let me know what you thought about Tyla's response. Did you appreciate her? I don't even think she clarified anything, but do you think she was right to stand 10 toes down and not talk about her racial, ethnic, and cultural origins on The Breakfast Club? Do you think that she could have explained it a little bit better? They brought up Tyla's interview in British Vogue and they were talking about it on The Breakfast Club, and they were all like, Charlamagne the God, Lauren, and Jess with the Mess, they all kind of said, oh, well, Tyla could have just came and said that here. And I disagree. I think she could have said that there, but Charlamagne the God, he's someone who likes to press. He can kind of push buttons. And so, yes, I do think she could have absolutely said what she said in British Vogue. I think she could have said it on The Breakfast Club. And I also think it would have devolved even further. It would not have been received in good faith. I think Charlamagne the God would have started to pick, and then because they open up the lines, I think people would have called in with the same usual nonsense, and then the diaspora wars would have been sparked, and it's just like, ugh, miss me with that. I'm over it. Also, let me know what you think about the self-love conversation. Do you think Drew being flamed was just a situation of right message, wrong messenger? Or do you think it was really condescending and people who are in relationships do not understand what it is like for single people nowadays, especially single people who are seeking partnership in a dating pool that is full of pee, poo-poo, malaria, all of the horrible things. like dysentery, E. coli. The dating pool is so trash. If you were going through this, oh my God, like thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. I hope you find someone so soon. Drop it in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace out.